Welcome to If Prices Could Talk, the podcast where we dive into the art and science of pricing, sales, and negotiation. I'm your host, Tracy Dent. Join me as we explore strategies and current events shaping the future of pricing power in B2B, featuring insights from industry leaders and subject matter experts. Let's jump into today's conversation. First and foremost, welcome to Richard. Welcome to the podcast.
Yay.
We got a new face.
Yeah, that's right.
Thank you.
It's so awesome to have you. I feel like you've been here for how long has it been now? How long have you been working at Holden?
I mean, technically, it's been like 6 weeks.
Okay.
Not that long.
Let me say a couple things about Richard. So you've had, 15 years of SaaS leadership experience. So we've got a lot of SaaS topics on the table today. And then also you happen to live in Switzerland.
Yeah, I mean, I spent a lot of time in New York City. Most of my SaaS time was in New York City, working with large enterprise customers there, bringing, a couple of them from really small revenue to pretty big exits, or almost $1 billion exit, which I was pretty excited to be a part of. Done a lot of M&A, flying over to Israel, doing a lot of due diligence there, acquiring a couple of companies over there, which was a lot of fun. And then ultimately, my wife and I wanted to start a family and have the European exposure. So I found a new SaaS company out here in Switzerland, moved over, did some pricing and packaging for them as they were expanding over from Europe for the first time, going to the United States. So it's a Swiss company going to the United States for the first time. So it was helping them kind of build out a pricing and packaging strategy that would work over there as a SaaS company, and they're crushing it. So, I'm pretty happy to be over here right now, and excited to be a part of the Holden team, more importantly. So
Awesome. Happy to have you. So we've got SaaS topics. There are a couple things that I put in here in the literature, shall I say, for today's episode, because I thought it would be good to talk about with Richard. We've got this roundtable style. So if you're listening and not watching, Jeet and Pete are also here. They're both partners at the firm. Starting place. So topics overall, we've got some things in tech and SaaS, like I said. We're going to visit with the transportation industry for a little bit. And then some tariff related topics, just because it's so prevalent right now. First up, this is the first headline. This is from Crunchbase: Rethinking Unit Economics, How AI Agents Are Rewriting the SaaS Playbook. So we've talked about this in different ways in past episodes, just how AI is shortening cycles, particularly in buyers' decisions. So this was an interesting one. There were a couple places overall talking about where AI is creating operating leverage. This is just a quotable from the article that felt worth reading. This guy said, "I believe that a company that is over-dependent on AI will do far worse than a company with no AI at all, as the human value cannot be underestimated. But SaaS companies that will outperform over the next 5 years won't just be product or sales led, they'll be AI leveraged." So there were a lot of different things about the use of GPT, the use of AI in this one. High level takeaways.
I don't know. I thought at first, will metrics and metrics for success change with the use of AI? It's kind of like, duh. Yeah, of course it will. If your customer acquisition cost is less than it was before, your ratios of these key metrics are all going to be different. So your baseline is going to be different, right? It's interesting to think through how it will change and how you should measure yourself given the changes. And I think that's the piece that probably should have been a bigger takeaway, which is, what should the new metrics be? If we know that there's going to be workflow automation for customer acquisition, as an example, and your customer acquisition cost is going to go down by 40% or 50%, whatever it is, that doesn't mean you just, you've gained that in profitability. It's kind of like, what are your competitors doing? What are you doing? There's so many other questions to be answered that it's not a one-to-one savings of cost here and your margins go up there. There's the conversation of, what are your competitors doing? Are you the fastest or are you faster than your competitor? It's the old bear joke, in the woods. And I think those all come up, but it will reshape us to think about new KPIs moving forward. That's just, my 2 cents.
yeah, and I'd echo that sentiment, G, is that I think it's inevitable, but we just don't know to what degree and how much these metrics are going to have to change, right? And just talking to a couple of my buddies in the space and asking them how they're currently leveraging AI, and some of the bigger ones, and even Salesforce, a couple of buddies there, they're not even fully sure how to properly implement it, right? They're using it, they're testing it, they're playing with it. But just like humans, there's a lot of inconsistencies, hallucinations, just like humans have. So they're not fully leveraging it for everything at the moment. There is human overlay, right? So there's like right now we're just in such a beginner's curve of how we're using this stuff, how we're leveraging it, and like permanently implementing it. Right now, it's everything is alpha, right? Way in the beginning stages of implementing this new technology. So I don't think we're going to be there in terms of like changing metrics for a while. I think everybody's trying to lay a metric on it of how much is this helping as quick as possible so we can measure it and improve, improve, improve. So I think it's important too, but I think right now we're still in the cycle of what metrics should we be measuring.
Yeah, I was going to say kind of something similar, and maybe there's a couple other metrics that are pretty standard, like revenue per head count, where you could, in theory, have the first one person exit of a SaaS company because they have all these AI agents. But I think we're probably a ways from that. But that also reminds me, Richard, your point on Salesforce. Jeet, I can't remember if it was you that was talking to someone at Salesforce or Tracy. But kind of remember that we kind of talked in the pod about those AI agents that Salesforce released maybe a year ago.
Yeah.
And it just sounded like that hadn't taken off the way it seemed like it might. There was that cool demo, and it wasn't quite to the level of what was the Nikola truck that like rolled downhill and didn't drive itself kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's not quite, it's obviously not quite that level, but I think there's like a little bit of, testing or cart before the horse for some of these use cases that's not quite there.
Yeah. I do think it will be interesting to look at metrics like you would assume if you use AI well, that your feature releases will be shorter. Your sort of monetization of features will be faster than before because theoretically you would meet the needs faster and you would know who those needs are coming from so you can monetize faster. So I think some of those things you would assume that those would lift. And I think that's probably what's slowing some of the adoption is if, people that are saying, okay, we're going to invest in it, because keep in mind, it is costly to invest in some of these things, not just to build it, but to maintain it. The cost of compute is quite a bit. So all that has to be taken into consideration. So if you're not seeing the right metrics pop from a monetization perspective, then why would you scale it out quickly or fast or anything? I mean, you could do it from a learning perspective because it's the right thing to do and you could be more efficient in the future. That's okay. But purely monetization and ROI, I just don't know if people are doing if they're doing it at scale well enough to be able to see the actual KPIs pop of monetization.
One of the other articles I sent was OpenAI looking to buy. There were two companies in this article. One was Anysphere and the other one was Windsurf. And I think Anysphere was like a $10 billion valuation. Windsurf was more like 3. But as these companies grow like crazy, I have two thoughts in my head. One is like, how fast are we going to see the commoditization of these kinds of companies? But also you've got these crazy valuations and a company like OpenAI that could build its own thing like that, but they're looking to buy instead. So what do you think about that one?
It's a growing company. I think their focus probably is on their main product, and some of these ancillary things is just probably a distraction to some degree. It would help them, but they might as well just, with their larger customer base, they could probably cross-sell some of those solutions to other existing base without having to slow down their development cycle. So that's probably it, or that's what I would think it would be.
I mean, I agree with that. For a lot of ChatGPT, OpenAI, like they're all about building the LLM model, right? And like figuring out how they can make it smarter, better, faster. These add-ons, whether that's where they've got the huge marketplace where anybody can pretty much build an add-on on top of it, right? And throw it in, just like Salesforce has got its additional marketplace where you can add on products. And sometimes they've been purchasing like CPQ. They purchased the CPQ, brought it in-house and built it out. Exactly to Pete's point, for them is they just get more people developing faster. So if they purchase like a dev platform, I mean, they can steal some of those devs internally. Plus, they can start getting more developers on their kind of quote unquote home platform to build out even more add-ons quicker. So it seems like a win-win in kind of two different areas for them if they kind of go down this route.
Did you see they rolled out these shopping features, by the way?
who rolled out shopping features?
OpenAI.
Oh,
They
really? I didn't see that.
yeah, new shopping features with Chat GPT search update. I just saw this morning,
Oh,
so
wow.
I didn't send it in the links. It says that they updated the web search capabilities to improve online shopping for users with product recommendations, images, reviews, and direct purchase links.
Oh,
Oh,
that's interesting. That's the last part is the most interesting part.
I
Yeah.
did use it to purchase tires for my car yesterday, actually,
Nice.
for at least to research it. So a couple of the links didn't take me direct, and I still wanted to like check for pricing and delivery and all that sort of thing. I feel like there's probably quirks there, but the comparison feature was good.
Pete, where did the link send you to? To the actual manufacturer, tire manufacturer, or somewhere
It,
else?
it was somewhere else. It wasn't the actual tire manufacturer. It was a distributor.
That's huge, Tracy.
Yeah.
We should probably do a separate conversation on that. That's a different conversation. Plus, it ties into Chrome really easily, right? So there's your conversation about Chrome right there.
Yeah.
That's the next layer, next level. So
Think about all that ad money.
yeah, that's pretty impressive. Because Chrome is valued at what, 50, 60 billion probably. That would
Yeah, 50 billion.
50 billion. Yeah.
Mhm.
So that would automatically just change that equation.
It's
It would
crazy.
probably what, 4x it. That's pretty big. So going back to the valuation piece of it and OpenAI's acquisition piece, my thought is, I think Richard said it correctly in the previous topic, which is we're so early to this. There's going to be so many different companies that pop up that's solving different types of small problems and small areas or focus niche areas to go deep into to solve some type of an issue or problem. And the bigger guys will see that solving the small problem as a cog to the bigger wheel to say, oh, wow, now I can do this next layer of whatever big thing because they've solved this little thing for this little application. And the valuation is going to swing drastically as these smaller companies come up because no one knows how to valuate under these market conditions. So you've got, demand issues right now. You've got all the tariff stuff that's causing consumer confidence to erode. You've got all these issues happening. So valuations are going to just wildly swing. Plus, you've got the infancy of the market. So any infancy of any market causes valuations to swing. So then if you layer market volatility on top of it, you're going to get 40% swings, 50% swings in valuations. So these guys are trying to be first. Then the question really is it important to be first or is it important to be kind of the best or the most used? You have to answer those questions. And right now, this is the typical Silicon Valley where dollars are like, has no value. And you're just throwing dollars at anything and everything to be first. And I don't think these guys know what first actually means. There's no monetization strategy. There's no thought of how long-term profitability is going to be generated. They're just going after, we can't be last. We have to be first. And I don't think these misses in acquisitions or switches in acquisitions from one company to the other, I don't know in the grand scheme long-term how much true impact it will have on end sort of true ROI of the company or the valuation of the company. I think I think what you're seeing is sort of the roughness, the choppiness of the water caused by infancy of the industry overlaid with market volatility. And that's it. There's nothing more than that.
Yet there's still this like looming pressure of like how all these companies, like, how are we using AI? How can we automate, blah, blah, blah. And
Yeah.
whatever race we're in.
That's right. That's right. But keep in mind, Tracy, I think this is a important thing. And I think you guys probably know this already. So I'm not saying anything this clever or new, but all these large language models. So I've got this giant bookshelf behind me that everybody can see, right? So right now, large language models reads every single book on this bookshelf, and then I can ask any questions, and it'll give me an answer based on all these books that are behind me. But that's not a very efficient use of the model. That's actually very wasteful. That's why there was kind of a funny thing that came out. People use please and thank you
Yeah.
in writing their LLMs. And somebody said, hey, if you took please and thank yous out, you would save like, I don't know, 20 million or 30 million a year in compute sort of effect on the environment because of compute power and energy costs and things like that. It's like wastage that's there. So there's a level of wastage that's in the LLM models right now with open LLMs like ChatGPT and others that's reading everything in this world in order to tell me how to unscrew a wall monitor or whatever it is, right? You don't need that. You're going to get these multimodal LLMs that's going to be much more specific to the environment that you're in, which is going to be a lot more efficient. It's going to be a lot more, you're going to have better depth. You're going to have less hallucination. You're going to have all these things. So people don't know that that's going to be the multimodal is going to be the end state, but you don't know how to get there yet because there's so many other problems to solve for. So all these little guys are solving for components of it, but no one knows what that end state is but they do know it's inefficient as heck right now. It really is. So people that think that ChatGPT is like the end result or some type of end result, these large language models, I think they're lying to themselves because there's so many other things to solve for because of inefficiencies by itself, not to mention other problems. So I think the valuations are just going to keep swinging.
Yeah.
It's just, you're going to get that for another at least 2 to 3 years. And rightfully, because there's a lot of problems to solve for. It's not a, poo-pooing what's actually happening.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, let's talk about some other uncertain times topics. So we've got lots to talk about with tariffs, but there were two things that stood out to me this week. One was the Amazon, like, yes, we are, no, we're not. This was like a mistake announcement that got to the White House that they were going to start bringing transparency to products that were affected by tariffs. And then they said, no, we're not doing that, which was just an interesting event. And then the other one was Albertsons. So this is like the 5th largest grocery store or supermarket chain in the US. And they released, I think by accident as well, although this one seems to be legit, a letter to their suppliers that said, we are not accepting cost increases due to tariffs. So this was like, I'm just going to read a quote from this. They said suppliers are not permitted to include tariff-related costs in invoices without prior authorization by Albertsons. Any invoices that include such charges will be subject to dispute and may result in payment delays. And then if you are going to request an exemption, you have to file with 3 months of advance notice. First of all, they have like over 2,000 stores in the US, but so they're kind of the Goliath in this instance with the suppliers. However, compared to somebody like Walmart, they're a lot smaller. I don't even know how they can do this. Can
I
they?
thought I mean, both stories are interesting. We could start with the Albertsons. To me, it would just read like a procurement playbook. I mean, we shall not accept any price change, except sometimes, and here's the process.
Right.
So to me, it's just I think if they can make suppliers hesitate on trying to push something through to them for an extra month or 3, that's huge. And, basically to kind of make people think, oh, I'll absorb this for a little bit because Albertsons doesn't want to pay it. But ultimately, if tariffs are going to flow through to a supplier's bottom line, they won't be able to continue supplying at likely the same price. So I think, and it was interesting that the CEO, under his watch, where that letter was released, he retires tomorrow. So I feel like this is just like, we were all good on my watch. Good luck. I gave you top cover. I told him not to give you a price increase. I don't know what you want me to do. I'm on the beach.
Good luck, Susan.
Yeah, exactly.
It seems like a great marketing ploy on their end as well. It's being like, hey, consumers, we got your back. Like, we're putting our foot down. But like you said, in the fine print, we'll take the tariffs if we need to.
Right. It was like, do you think it's potentially like, oops, this letter got out. We don't know how that happened. Now that people know.
Totally.
I thought they sent the letter to their suppliers.
They did.
So they'd sent it. So if you send any kind of notification to suppliers, especially something like this, you plan for it to leak out. This is a arrogant political letter to make a stance and to get in the good graces of this political party that we're under here. Because the reason I'm saying it is because Pete's right that when they had the quote, they said delayed payments and dispute. They didn't say no payment. They didn't say I will not pay you. They didn't say I will not take delivery. They said, I'm going to dispute it and I'm going to delay payment, which for a supplier, those are very difficult words, right? So I'm not minimizing those words, but they don't have a choice. Just like no one has a choice to tell them how to price, they can't tell their suppliers within their contract that they have that they can't do something to run their business. That's illegal. So that's why they have to use those words that says, hey, I'm going to find other levers to make your life more painful if you do this, which they have, they have the right to do it under business contract laws, right? And that's their prerogative. I think there's a bigger macroeconomic effect here, right? Which is, okay, so you don't buy some of these from these suppliers that are raising prices. Then you don't have availability of goods. Americans are spoiled that we need price and availability. Those are my two biggest things in grocery store. If you don't have availability, there's a problem. Just like when we didn't have eggs, availability of eggs, egg prices went up and people bought eggs. Shelves were cleared out. I mean, the price elasticity was, I know it wasn't as elastic as people thought it was, that people just stopped buying eggs because it went up by 50 cents, and it just is incredible what's out there, what's happening. And we know that that's going to be there. So I think Albertsons' letter is just like Pete said perfectly. It's like one of those first sort of lines in the sand, which is not really a line in the sand. They're kind of putting it out there, but they're not going to have much of a choice when the whole industry is going a certain way. These suppliers don't make enough margin to absorb minimum 10%, at the most like 45-50%, unless they're bringing something over from China, which I don't think is a lot. But regardless, even if they move it to local suppliers or whatever it is, local supplier cost is very high. So I don't even 40-50%. It might be cheaper to get it from China. I don't know.
I mean, this is a great, what you just said at the beginning of it, and a couple of times you alluded to it, Jeet, is that in a way, this is Albertson making a political statement as well. Everything around, like going back to the first topic of this, of like Trump versus Amazon and the tariffs that they were saying they were going to start laying on there, like everything to do with tariffs can be taken in two different political views, right? Like you can be putting on like, this is the Trump tariff, this is the China tariff, right? This is a tariff, but it's going to be viewed positively or negatively. Trump noticed that Amazon.com is going to be putting tariff on things, and people are going to directly associate that to Trump's fault, right? And he doesn't want that on his play of bills right now.
That's correct. Now, there's another reason to do it that way, right? We advise our clients to put a line item in there for market conditions. You don't have to call it tariff. You can call it market conditions, whatever it is. And the reason is it's a surcharge, and then it can go down. So when you have volatility, when Trump comes in and says it'll be 10%, 20%, 40, 120, 180, you can't change prices that fast and hold on to those prices. But if you have a line item that says 20 today, 30 tomorrow, 80, then back down to 2% or whatever, if you have the line item, you can move it up and down. You can toggle that a lot simpler, better, easier, and full transparency to the consumer. It's actually better because then you understand what's happening up and down, and you don't feel gouged, in the process. That's also one of the reasons I kind of like the Albertsons one also, because there are going to be suppliers, and we know it. Some of our clients during the inflation time wanted to do this, which is let's use inflation as an excuse to raise prices across the board. Well, you can't do that. You're gonna like ruin your trust that you have with your customers. So Albertsons like kind of also saying, hey, you can't just randomly increase it. If you have a reason to do it, come and let's talk. So if you want to take that letter a little bit lighter than they wrote it, it's not a bad way to say, come to the table, explain to me how tariffs is hitting particular goods, and for those goods, we will accept the change. But you cannot just across the board change my prices. And Amazon and with these line items that says tariff or market conditions or whatever, I like those personally because I think then you have the flexibility to go up and down as rules change. If he's going to stick with the rule, then maybe you don't need that line item because you're creating a new baseline. So milk's going to be 20% more, whatever. Iron's going to go up by 30%. Whatever it is, you're resetting the baseline. You don't need that line item at that point. But we know that that's not how this administration is doing things. And if that's not the way they want to do it, then it has to be this way, where it's a line item.
It's interesting too, because if you think about if you disaggregate the price into a market volatility component and a base price component, do you start measuring inflation off just the base price, or can you say, hey, our economy actually hasn't changed that much? It's just the market volatility component that's causing inflation.
Well, Jeet talked about that just 2 seconds ago. He said, Albertsons can't just say like, oh, inflation increased by 5%. We put that, it's, this is a whole different piece here where it's just like, there's so much uncertainty. Nobody knows what direction to go. So like, how are you going to capture that? You can't just increase price, right? But the administration was currently saying that, why wasn't there an inflation fee when inflation went up under Biden's term, the last administration? Why wasn't there like a fee for that, or a tariff? That was shown on Amazon.com. That was one of his arguments.
Yeah, but that was much more stable, right? I mean, that's the thing is it's the stability piece. And I think what everybody is trying to avoid right now, which is the most important part of this whole thing, forget about the magnitude of the tariffs and everything, is consumer confidence. We're screwing around with consumer confidence right now. So if you don't have that transparency, so just like us humans, right? We can take a lot. We have a lot of patience as long as we're communicated properly. We're given the transparency. We understand things. Then all of a sudden, our patience is better. It's bigger. It's longer. It's better. We can justify things. We can look at things more objectively if we get those things. If you start taking those away from us, then that hurts my confidence. And what happens is we all go to the sidelines. If we all go to the sidelines, we're not spending money. Regardless of whether we have it or not, we're not spending money. Unemployment's getting higher every day. And then we've got, companies not spending money, which is stagflation. All of a sudden, everybody's on the sidelines and it's stagflation. Welcome to Japan.
Honestly, like, I don't know if we're going here next, Tracy, but I feel like this is like a great segue into like Slate, that new super low cost car, which is just like, the bloat of cars with artificial intelligence, with everything, the way everything's going back to like a basic cheap car that's just pure essentials is like almost something comforting, It's like it's what Jeep used to be. Jeep was like a bare bones wartime, like my cheap car that I can build whatever I want on top of it, but I just know it works, it's reliable, and it's my guy. Like this Slate is exactly kind of what I feel like the United States is looking for right now, like a reliable, cost-friendly car that like I can make my own,
Yep.
My son's coming back from he lives in Boston. He's going to come and stay with us for a little bit of time before moving to LA, and we have to get him a car because in Phoenix everybody has to drive. So if he's going to work here, he needs a car, and we don't have extra cars, to give him. So I saw the Slate commercial and I loved it because I'm like, what a great way to get him a entry-level car that over time, as he makes more money, he can add to it. He can make it bigger, better, nicer. He can do whatever he wants to it. I'm not going to pay for it. He can pay for that, but maybe I'll get him a car so he can go to work and he can make the money that he needs to. And I'm like, and then less than 20K is pretty nice. It's still more than I want to pay, but it's still pretty nice to get him started with a new car. And that's very attractive. And I agree with you, when the market is volatile, when things are just not predictable, I want bare bone, but I want the ability to scale up when I do have cash or when I do have the need or want or desire to spend the money, which is a really nice plan.
Yeah. I mean, it makes me think a lot about like Crocs. Like Crocs are simple and basic, right? But you can put gibbets on them, right? It's the same thing. You can like deck out your Slate.
I don't know. I'm not a Crocs guy. I don't know.
You get the winter Crocs. You get some fur on them.
Right.
Right, but it's like the same thing as like an IKEA thing. Like it's cheap, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it's not high quality, and you feel like a connection because you built it, so you're just like gonna keep it there, and you have memories of like getting in an argument with your spouse over building that thing. Like it's the same thing. Like this is yours and you can turn it into whatever you want to be, and it's fully open sourced, everything about it, so you can have all these third-party vendors just making tons of cool stuff for it. Honestly, like I don't even live in the United States. I want to like buy one for you guys. So it's just like I can live vicariously.
Vicariously, yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
feel free to buy one for my son.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How
Company
many social
car.
media followers does he have? Can I follow the
Yeah.
evolution of this?
Yeah.
Anyone ever build an IKEA like cubbies with like the unfinished end facing out, and you're like, it's good enough. This is just how it lives now. You like
those
add the white paint to like the particle
Right.
board.
Right.
extra 24 screws and a panel.
It's
Those
like,
are
nope,
not
we're
important.
good. I think we're done.
Every time we
That
talk,
was I know it's Saturday. I don't need to do Sunday also.
That's right. That's right.
every time we talk about the auto industry, I keep thinking like the next time is going to be when we revisit this topic and the scales will have tipped into like as a service, car renting, ride sharing, all that kind of stuff, and less owning cars. Maybe I'm biased living in the city, but it feels like we've got the announcement of Uber and Volkswagen and their robotaxis. Tesla's coming out with their thing in Austin soon. We've got Waymo growing, plus just general talks of tariffs and how costs are going up with cars in general. I keep thinking like when is this whole thing gonna turn into a very different auto market, you know?
Yeah, it's a cool. Yeah, the Waymo CEO saying they have 250,000 rides a week and growing. That was pretty incredible. And they're only in 4 cities. So yeah, I do think it's a good question. I mean, like the technology catches up, you can start to use it, so it's actually there, and then the cost for the alternative of like the status quo, I should say, it keeps going up. I still think there's just so much inertia and behavior, especially in the US, of just the road infrastructure and people feeling independent. And the American dream is like, I get to drive where I want, when I want, in my own vehicle. So I think it's going to happen in cities more just because it's going to be the more convenient thing. And then you don't have to pay for an expensive parking spot as real estate prices continue to stay high or increase further. But yeah, it's hard to predict, but I feel like there needs to be the alternative choice for people to make for that to even become a reality. So, I mean, I feel like it'll probably happen quicker than we think, but those are going to be a segment of the population that never changes. But I think it will be a growing industry.
Maybe it's just me personally, and it's time for me to make the switch and get rid of
Yeah,
my car
yeah.
and do the
Kill
other
the
stuff.
car payment.
Yeah.
So you're a good target audience, for this conversation because I think part of the problem is the economies of scale. There are companies out there that are breaking the mold right now, but it's not enough for behavior change. Economically, it's just there aren't a lot of solutions out there. And behavior wise, we're like Pete said, we're refusing to give up our behavior in order to take that leap, in which case the new models don't have scale in order to make it more efficient. So we're kind of stuck. So that's where government subsidies come in. That's where everything comes in to help us make that leap and that change. And I don't think the subscription models that are available, as well as Turos that are available and other sort of subscription-based models, they can't give you that ROI. So why would you change?
Yeah. I mean, Pete, your first comment, and you echoed it again, Jeet, is that the behavior of like the American dream of like I want it now the way I want it, like for the cost I want it as fast, like that's a huge hurdle to get over, right? And at some point, like you're not gonna have, especially the time aspect, you're not gonna have like a car for every household,
Yeah.
right, available. So there's always gonna be waiting time for when you have to go somewhere, and that's a big hurdle to get over.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
almost like the segment that you need to go after first is those that don't own cars in the first place. And they're just doing Uber now, and like it's more seamless to switch from a driverless car to a driverless car. That's easy. They're already used to that behavior.
Yeah.
Right. It seems like it would work better in other countries first versus the United States, where the United States has been built around cars for individuals.
Yeah.
You want to just wait for the robot horse from that motorcycle company?
Kawasaki, yeah, that was awesome.
I wouldn't mind. I actually want what I really want, by the way. I want those little hovercrafts I
Mm.
want the little that just comes over and picks you up. They're two-seaters, and you just fly over traffic, and you can get to your destination quickly. It's like basically those drones that are meant to carry people. And I love those things. I
I
absolutely.
remember in like 1995, Boys Life magazine. I was a Boy Scout. This is a Boy Scout magazine. They were talking about when flying cars are going to be like mainstream, and it was saying like 2003.
Mhm.
Stuck in traffic, no problem.
Right.
Yeah.
They do. I mean, I do have to give credit. I spent a lot of time in New York, and they're doing the helicopters from JFK and
Mhm.
from JFK specifically, and that's I think $200 per person per ride. So
Yeah, it's
it's
reasonable.
it's actually reasonable. It's shockingly to save. I don't know. You probably save 40 minutes, if not more, depending on traffic and when you're coming in. But that's
But
a
also think of an
that's pretty
Uber. An
big.
Uber is 100 to do the same thing.
That's right. Uber can be
Yeah.
100, 120, depending on tip and all sorts of other, surge pricing and everything like that. But it's not a bad way to go,
Yeah.
for saving of time.
I mean, the only
Plus,
bummer
it's
part is
very cool.
once you land, you still have to go the last mile. You still need to call an Uber again. So
That's right.
Mhm.
That's right. You do. But then you have all the other public transportations available easily, right? You can take a subway easily, which will be faster than cars and things like that.
Yeah.
yeah,
All right. The other thing that we talked about, by the way, last week when Jeet and I were at this other conference, we were like, let's do a segment called Price Flop. We had so many different ideas for what to call this thing. We add this in next time. I think this is going to be so fun to do as a segment of like either a new product introduction or some big mistake, like the poor Wendy's CEO with his communication about dynamic pricing and like the backlash, that kind of stuff. I think will be an interesting thing to add in going forward. Working title, Price Flop for now.
I love it.
That'll be
I
fun.
like
Are we
it.
gonna
Yeah.
are we gonna nominate somebody every week or every month? Is it
Well,
gonna
we
be
do
monthly?
these once a month.
We do
So
these
let's do
once
it
a
every
month.
month. Yeah.
Do we have any spitball ones that we have now that we want to do? What was the one that you just mentioned, Tracy? You just mentioned
Um, what did I mention?
Wendy's.
Oh,
Recently.
Wendy's. Yes.
dynamic
Yes.
pricing. That made me think of downtown. There was called the Exchange Bar in New York, and they had beers were a dynamic,
Oh yeah. Yeah.
and then
Oh,
I went to one in Austin, Texas as well. Every bar that opens up like that ends up closing.
I don't, but I don't know if the pricing was the reason for it to close because the pricing actually drew some demand, that people were coming in just to because the price didn't fluctuate like, this beer is $1 a glass to $200 a glass. It was like such a narrow band. No one really cared about it. But I think bars flop for many other reasons, not that particular.
Yeah, not because it was an exchange bar. Then we should make one that actually works and stays.
yeah.
But then you have to figure out how a bar stays, right? I think that fundamentally that's a big one to figure out.
Oh man,
That
it's
seems like a problem we should try to address.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's Ozempic's going to mean that more bars fail.
yeah. We should probably go on site to do some analysis for that
I
one.
think it's the funny.
Yeah.
This is a funny topic when I'm pretty much the only drinker between the four of us.
This is this is gonna take us back to Amsterdam for the Heineken Good Times Index. We got to get back into the research. Super important for us. We got to
I
get
think
back
we should
into
do
it.
I think we should do a follow-up on the Heineken. Where are they now? Good time
Yeah.
index.
Yeah,
I think that would be a good follow-up episode.
good. Next time.
I was looking up on the pricing flops one. Would you guys consider Starbucks and their kind of bloat of all the adders and pricing in like the additive milks and all that stuff as a huge pricing flop, and then walking that back? Or would you call that a strategic mismatch of like, they were the third spot, right? They were supposed to be a friendly place that you knew everywhere you went, and they just started getting too operationalized, right? And profit driven in everything they were adding, and they forgot their true origins.
Yeah, my thought is that like it's the adders by themselves weren't a problem, but the fact that there was like, I don't know, 10 billion permutations on what you could order at Starbucks like was just too complicated. And so then the adders just multiplied that times 10, whatever it was. That was probably the bigger thing.
I agree 100% with Pete. Adders are very, very convenient for transparency, for choice. It makes it easier for people to buy. But if you have, the running joke is, what's the restaurant that
Olive
has a
Garden?
huge menu?
Cheesecake Factory.
Cheesecake Factory. I mean, that's the joke, right? Is if you give people too many choices, no one wants to go there because it's just too many choices. It's just you get anxiety or you just freeze. And I think at their sort of price sensitivity and their target market, people are not very sensitive to paying whatever $8 for a cup of coffee. So if you put all that stuff in there, it just confuses people. It's just like, I'd rather not. I have my fancy way of ordering my fancy coffee. Leave me alone. Tell me the price point, and I'll just leave. I think it's just too complicated. So, two answers for your question, I think.
Let me order through the app so I don't have to talk to anybody.
Yeah, but I do think it'll be interesting to see how Slate does. Not that their pricing will be a flop, but more of is your pricing aligned with market needs is the question, and so. It'll be interesting to see how we define what a pricing flop is and who we nominate for pricing flops. Because the $20K base price may not be a flop in our strategic reasoning and thinking, but it may be a flop to what the market really wants at that moment in time.
Yeah.
I don't think so, but could be.
We'll find out.
I think maybe next time, Richard, what we can also do is, because we take advantage of your European roots right now, and maybe we kind of bring in a little flavor of this is what's happening in the US. What are you seeing in Europe? How are tariffs impacting Europe? What are you hearing from people? So to kind of understand the global impact of some of these things would be very interesting to go down.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea.
Or Richard just trying to pick up his Jeep and getting all the protesters. He's just trying to get
and also I think there's also like Richard, you were just talking about the onboarding with like getting the laptop. There's taxes, whether you call them tariffs or whatever, that makes Switzerland more insular with how they want you to purchase day to day anyway. So there's like less change from a behavior perspective, maybe to accept tariffs, but also you've lived with them normally. But yeah, I'm sure there's going to be supply chain issue. Like you'd probably get more stuff close to home or near borders as opposed to like importing from the United States.
Right. I mean, also that way, just like you said, the way we buy is significantly different than the United States. I mean, in the United States, every single day I was ordering online. And now I order online like maybe once a month. Like actually not even. Like I can't even remember this year. I don't think I ordered anything online this year.
That's crazy.
You haven't ordered anything online?
Yeah. It's just like not part of the culture here.
And that you don't mean food, you mean like anything.
Anything. And this goes very much to what Pete said, is that in Switzerland, if you order something that's from outside of Switzerland and it's over 60 francs, you pay like a 40% tax on that. Right? So like instantly you're taxed on that. Which is just gets really expensive. And then B, like shipping's not next day. That just like doesn't exist. You're waiting a long time. And if it is next day, like it's because it's coming from a warehouse that's in your town. So you might as well just drive there and pick it up. And then you can see it. Right. And then just like for food as well, like you can buy local steak or you can buy steak that's from Ireland, but they're the same price because the markup of the Irish beef makes it be the same price as the Swiss stuff. And everything has to be labeled what country it's coming from. Even any good that you have, this keyboard, like even if there's a keyboard in the store, it has to say like where the keyboard's coming from. Was it made in the United States or was it made in Switzerland? And it's marked like right there on the label.
Yeah, that's cool.
But any restaurant, any store, and anything, you'll have like a list. I mean, restaurants might just be like when you enter a list of like origin of like all the different produce and what country it comes from.
Yeah,
I'll send a screenshot so next time when we talk about this, I can send nuances. We can flash it up.
Richard can send the literature.
Yeah. Come shop with Richard for a day in Switzerland.
I like
it's just like opening up the app and 10 times a day, just be like, nope.
Nope.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Cool.
Till next time.
Later.